Alan Walker, a board member on the board of the Twin Cities Creation Science Association. And we're doing another podcast today entitled How to Start a Creation Club. How to Start a Creation Club. And joining me is Brian Lauer. Brian has a passion to help people solidify their faith in the Bible by looking at science. In fact, he's entitled his ministry, Solidify Your Faith. He teaches, as I do, that we support an overwhelmingly loving creator, a young earth, and a worldwide flood. Community creation clubs may help people see the truth. And Brian Lauer has given creation presentations from Minnesota to Florida at churches, schools, camps, and universities. He has also helped start Bible clubs and creation clubs at colleges. Our government, schools, and museums and media are pushing evolution as dogma. And people need to see both sides of the issue, creation versus evolution, so that they are educated instead of being indoctrinated. So for our listeners, we're going to go over some basic principles of why, how, when, and where, and how to start a creation club. And Brian gave a recent presentation on January 19th, 2021 at the Twin Cities Creation Science Association via Zoom. And during that presentation, which he covered a lot about how to learn more about creation through the different venues that are out there, he talked about how to start a creation club just briefly. And we want to develop that subject matter in this podcast today. And by the way, that presentation that Brian gave on the 19th of January is now posted on Twin Cities Creation Science Association YouTube. So let's start, Brian, with first question. Why start a creation club?
Well, thanks for having me, Alan. And you kind of covered it in the intro. People need an opportunity to think, and to think about something, they need to get all the information, see both sides of the issue, and they are not being allowed both sides in our government, schools, museums, and media. And the results are devastating. Just look at our culture. It's becoming more and more godless, and it's becoming more and more lawless. And they go all hand in hand. And statistically, 67 to 90% of our church kids stop going to church once they leave home. And they're leaving mainly because they doubt the Bible's true. And they began to doubt the Bible was true in junior high and high school when they were being force-fed the Big Bang and evolution. And so I think that's a very good reason to start a creation club. Just give kids an opportunity to think, because if you don't believe there's a God, like the science class says, what's your chance of putting your faith in his son to pay for your sins so you can go to heaven? So what we're talking about has practical applications and also eternal ramifications also.
Brian, that's true. That was true in my life. When I graduated from high school and went to university, for the first 2 years, I didn't go to church other than when I went home to be with my parents. I never searched out a church at the campus or anything like that. And basically, I was taking up all the evolutionary doctrine that was being taught by the professors, and basically became agnostic.
Right.
All right, second question. How much do you need to know about creation to start a club?
Well, that's the beautiful part. You don't have to know hardly anything because there's so many resources available. Basically, all you need is someone who cares about the issue, cares about the kids, cares about the community, wants them to be able to think. And you need a place to meet, or you could even Zoom it, I suppose. But a place to meet, and ideally you can show some movies. And there's a bunch of creation movie producers that have given us the freedom to show their movies without buying a license. And you can find that list on my website. It's solidifyyourfaith.webs.com. And there's a list of them, and there's some excellent, excellent resources.
I agree. I was just on your website and saw that. So listeners, you can go to that website. So where do you start a club? What kind of venues?
Well, you can start at, well, it's a place to meet. It could be a church, a school, a home, a business, a library. In St. Cloud, we started one at our public library. And we just showed as a club leader, you can run it however you want. And I just showed a creation movie once a month on a Saturday afternoon. And I would just promote it and on Facebook and invite homeschool kids and whoever and just open it up and then just see what happens. And I think I would promote it as a creation party. Everybody likes to go to a party, a creation celebration. Just make it a lot of fun. You know, this is another perspective. Let's learn and make it fun. And I think that'll get people to look forward to it and bring more of their friends.
Well, how do you get the word out? How do you promote this?
I did it on social media. You can do it on Facebook, and I knew some homeschool parents, and they bring their kids. You can put up flyers, like we put up, got posters that we hung at St. Cloud State when we did some of these talks, and I put that out in the hallway where our room was, and then people saw the poster and poked their head in and would ask about it, and they'd come. And it's just a matter of getting the snowball rolling. It might take a little bit of time, but then once it gets going, and the key, I think, is to bring people to the speakers that we have every month at Twin Cities Creation Science Association. We get some of the sharpest speakers in the country to come, and I use the club as an advertisement for those speakers. And then at the end, it's because I'm speaking on Tuesday, and it's like, hey, there's a speaker on, I show the movie on Saturday. It's, hey, there's a speaker Tuesday night. Who wants to go? Who wants to ride? And I'll bring them to see the speakers, and that seems to make all the difference. It's like, wow, it's that we are standing on solid ground. We're not on thin ice, and we got the truth.
So when you're at your club meetings, creation club meetings, what kind of interaction do you have with the students and the attendees?
Well, it depends on the age of the group. And basically, I was just showing movies, so it's pretty much, you know, we'll show the movie, and afterwards we'll have any questions. You know, it's as a club, you can run it however you want. You can have more interaction or less interaction. And I'd encourage, if it's younger kids, keep it fast moving. You know, they might not sit through a whole movie, but just maybe show them some segments. And there are good resources too for kids, and just make it fun.
Great. What creation movies are available to show? You mentioned that there are many that you don't need a license for, which makes it easier for you then to show.
Right. Yeah. The ones that I like, I mean, these are fast and quick hitting, are the Reasons for Hope. I think it's Debunk Evolution. Or Debunk Evolution. Let me just check this out. Debunkevolution.com. And that's Carl Kirby. And he just, I mean, they're three minutes maybe, but they're fast paced, they're animated, and he's pretty humorous in some of the stuff that he talks about. His ministry is called Reasons for Hope, or r4h.com or .org, I believe. Check that out. But yes, and then we've shown a lot of these at college, just excellent videos. Let's see here. Yeah, lustramedia.com has some. Mission Imperative has some really good ones. That's Mike Snagley. ScienceUprising.com. That one is my favorite because it's PhD scientists just destroying evolution. GenesisApologetics.com has some. The Grand Experiment is awesome, which we saw at the end of my talk with Carl Werner. CreationAstronomy.com if you're into astronomy. Spike Pizarris, now this is going to be more for, it won't be for kids, it's more informational, but he does What You're Not Being Taught About Astronomy. Volume 1 is the solar system, and every planet violates the Big Bang assumptions at least once. And What You're Not Being Taught About Stars and Galaxies, and What You're Not Being Taught About the Big Bang and universe. And they're grasping at straws. Creation.com has some good ones. Creationtoday.org. The Miranda films are good. There's a whole wealth of tools out there. You could show one a Saturday for a couple of years, and you wouldn't get through them all.
No, thanks for sharing that. I like Genesis Apologetics. I'll pull those up to show my grandkids.
Oh yeah, they're very entertaining. They're very good.
So what kind of results have you observed by these people come, the kids and the young adults?
Well, one of them was, well, it's interesting because our first club meeting was in January and a bunch of homeschool kids came. And then the second one was in February, and it was during a blizzard where I had canceled it the night before. And then I saw that the road was plowed, and it's like, well, we're doing it. and a homeless guy came in. There wasn't much people, the weather was kind of bad. A homeless guy came in, and I got to know him and got to know him better over the summer. And now he's been coming to church the last 7 or 8 Sundays in a row. So, he was kind of surprised I could show the creation stuff in the library. And yeah, we hit it off pretty good. And as we were doing that, a couple of people, one guy poked his head in and said, "What you doing here?" And I said, "Well, we're showing creation clips." And he goes, "I'll be back." And he comes back with his friend, and they sit down, and I showed him scienceuprising.com, the origin of life and the origin of DNA. And as they got up to leave, his friend didn't look too happy, but the other guy says, "If this is true, this raises some important questions." And I said, "It most certainly does." And so with the club, we just kind of crack the door open to people that there is another way of looking at it, and hopefully they kick it down. And I was speaking at a church one time, and I invited the pastor to come to hear one of our talks, and I picked him up and brought him and a couple of his kids, and they just loved it. And then they started a creation club in their community, and then COVID hit, and so it's kind of put the brakes on it for a little while, but hopefully we'll figure out how to do it on Zoom or whatever.
Yeah.
But that's some of the results. If we keep plugging away, I think we're going to have success.
That leads into my next question. You indicated that you started one at the local library and then with help this pastor start one.
Right.
What other cases or startups have you started with working with other people?
I've done the college ministry 3 times. Typically, if I can get a table on a campus, I can start a club 75% of the time. I just need to meet the right people. I helped them start Grace Campus Fellowship at St. Cloud State. I have been Brainerd to help them start Campus Bible Fellowship, and they're pretty much on their own. And it's kind of neat. What they wanted to do was have a Bible study every week in the afternoon, and not in a classroom, but right out in the middle of everybody. And I thought that was pretty good. And then I helped them down at Northwestern. I helped them start the Creation Science Club so that they can at least announce from chapel when our speakers are coming in. And neat to see the students take ownership. And like, Emily, she had her creation week. She showed a bunch of videos and had a speaker, and just right at the beginning of the quarter, so people, can stand strong and they don't get their faith shipwrecked.
Well, on these college campuses, are there some, hurdles that they have to overcome?
Well, the hurdles are the requirements to get a club. Typically, from what I've seen on most campuses, is you need 10 students, you need 3 of them to be officers, and you need the advisor, which is the trick of it all. But God's provided those, and then we write up a constitution, which we get approved, and then they have access to the rooms and the theaters, and pretty much like any other club. So it's pretty labor intensive, but the benefits are well worth it, I think. But I think, it's a lot easier, to start one in a community where you just say, this is it, invite your friends, invite your relatives, and see what happens.
Right. And every community's got a library, and oftentimes they have meeting rooms. And,
Right.
How about with your experience now, and you've done this for a number of years, what have you learned that maybe you'd do differently?
I would not ask the person checking out my books if I could get a room, because I did that several years ago. I wanted to do a creation club, and I asked the clerk, and they said, "No, that's can't do that." And then just a year ago in Christmas, I was just trying to see what their what their hours were, and I just registered for a room. If they can give it to the Baha'i faith, they can give it to a creationist.
That's right.
I've been getting the rooms when I request them, and so our voice is just as important as anyone else's. I was at the guy who helped me do this on the college ministry. I kind of learned from him. We're at the kiosk one time, and some professors were giving us some static about it, about our creation ministry, and we were there with an Israel talk too. And he says, "Well, this is a college. This is a marketplace of ideas." And my friend just kind of stood up and pushed the Bible to the middle of the table and says, "Yeah, and we're presenting our idea. Our idea is just as valid as anybody else's."
Yeah. When I became a creationist and a believer about at the same time, which was several decades ago, there were not a lot of sources.
Right.
And now today, it seems like God is working in a lot of leaderships, a lot of people to want to share what the Bible says about creation and teach those truths. And so who's your favorite speaker At TCCSA, we have many speakers, but just give me one or two people that you really like to hear and what they have to say.
Well, I think Randy Carter is an excellent speaker. He knows a lot of information and he can deliver it very interesting. My favorite source to go to find information is rsr.org. It stands for realscienceradio.org. And Bob Enyart, he's got some of the best creationists come on every week. And if I want to learn about a topic, I'll just go into rsr.org and I'll type in dinosaur tissue or something like that. And it'll pop up all the radio shows he's had. And he's got like 25 years of radio shows that are accessible. And he's got a list, I think it's the most comprehensive list of soft tissue and dinosaur bones on the internet. And secularists will say that. And I was just listening yesterday, John Sanford spoke at the NIH, a club at NIH invited him to come in and speak. And so he gave his genetic entropy talk. And it raised a lot of questions. Well, if this is true, how come we still have horseshoe crabs, all these millions of years? And he goes, well, exactly. Basically, they're not millions of years old. And a week after he spoke, NIH, they got rid of that organization or that club.
Is that right?
That's right.
Oh, man.
Yeah, so there's a selected idea that people are forced to think into. And when you step out of that dogma, you kick the sacred cow, now things are going to happen. And, expelled, no intelligence allowed. Ben Stein documents that in that documentary. People are getting fired. They're losing positions. They're, not getting tenure. And yeah, it's really, really sad. And I think this has to be a grassroots movement. We can't expect the leaders to teach us this. They've got too much at stake. They got money and prestige and power if evolution's true. And they're not going to open the door to creation. And so that's where we just have to start spreading it amongst ourselves. And if you get in a discussion with an evolutionist or an atheist, just ask them, how did life begin? Where did matter come from? They don't have a clue. They're operating from a faith-based position just like we are. It's not science versus religion. It's science based on one view of history that acknowledges God, that's creation, versus science based on another view of history that doesn't acknowledge God, which is evolution. And they got the funding, but we're doing better science because our foundation is true.
So you brought up the subject of scientists having trouble going forward in their tenure and that kind of thing. I know Jerry Bergman wrote a book, Slaughter of the Dissidents, where he talks, many different cases in the chapters of that. So now let's talk about your Facebook site, your website. How can people contact you?
Oh, yeah. If anybody wants a speaker or a presentation, they can contact me at solidifyyourfaith@hotmail.com. That's solidifyyourfaith@hotmail.com. And they can see some of my talks on my YouTube channel, which is called Solidify Your Faith. There's talks from campuses, churches, camps, even clubs. And my website, if they want to hear radio interviews or see some pictures and also have access to the talks, is solidifyyourfaith.webs.com. So that's solidifyyourfaith.webs.com. And I've got a Facebook page with the same name. We started a Facebook page for our local club called Minnesota Creation Science Club. And so people can like that, then they'll know. We've been doing some Zooming. Let's see how that works. Just you have a topic, talk about it for 5 or 10 minutes and then kick off. That's basically Facebook Live, I think is what we did there. So there's other resources, but yeah, and I've got, typically every year I'm heading down to Florida. So if you know a church between Minnesota and Florida, I might be heading by.
All right. I subscribed to your YouTube site. I just typed in Solidify Your Faith, Brian Lauer, brought that up, and then I hit the subscribe button. So anytime you put up a new one, like you recently did, it
Right.
shows up for me.
Right.
Thanks for sharing those sources for people to contact you.
Right.
Do you have any final thoughts that you'd like to share?
Well, I think there's a battle, and we need everybody we can get. And there's a battle between God's word and man's word. And the people on the sidelines aren't helping. So we need to stand up for the truth and educate other people. And when people think that people are mutated animals and there's no God, there's a lot more crime. And we got to see that skyrocket in 1963 when the Bible and prayer was taken out of our government schools. And so when you see the headlines, just kind of think, now, are we doing the things God's way or man's way? And if we're doing things man's way, where did that start? And I submit to you, it starts in junior high school. That's where they're being taught earth science, and 10th grade biology. That's where they're being taught evolution. And it's a dogma. And I think if you care about your kids and your family and your friends and your relatives, just start showing movies and open up the door to creation and let people just talk about it. Then they can think. That's the key. Is get people to think, because if they're thinking, they're going to find the truth eventually. The challenge is the powers that be do not allow us to think by seeing both sides. They censor things.
Well, thank you very much, Brian. I'm going to close here by talking about our listeners. If they want to get involved and start their own creation club, parents, pastors, youth pastors, teachers, there's a wealth of information out there. Also, TCCSA, Twin Cities Creation Science Association, has lots of DVDs of past speakers that we have, plus our website. I mean, you could run a year probably just watching our website if you get once a month or twice a month. So with that, we'll close, and I appreciate your time, Brian.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.